Let's talk about authenticity, one of my favorite topics to explore and to discuss with people, because I think we all, on one level, understand what it means to be authentic, but then on another level, we don't really understand how to do it, how to be it, and especially how to maintain it. I think that is one of the things I'm understanding, is that we have periods in our lives where we are very authentic, we're very real, and then we tend to drift out of that. We fall away from being our authentic selves, and we get influenced by others, or we start to kind of act in a way that's not really authentic, and we have to go back to it. We have to refine ourselves in a way at different times of our lives. So let's talk about, from my perspective, what I've learned about authenticity. There's some good ideas here that I think will be valuable for you too. The first thing I want to talk about is authenticity important? Do we actually need to be authentic in our lives? The reality is that we can get away with not being authentic. We can be a fake version or a manufactured version of ourselves if we want to be. You can kind of lie, you can put on a persona or a social mask, as some psychologists call it. You can kind of fake your way through life if you want to. And to a point, you will actually succeed quite well. We see a lot of people in the social arena, maybe in politics or in, the entertainment world or business or things like that, where they do put on a persona, a way of behaving that may or may not be their authentic self, but they kind of hide behind it in a way because the persona gives them power. And you've probably felt this at times in your life where you as a person, it's easier for you to be inauthentic. It's easier for you to be a little bit fake, or to be whatever you want to say, an abridged version of yourself, so that you can actually get what you want, or you can get ahead in the world. And that's my question, is, do we actually need to go beyond that? Can it be enough for our lives to be an inauthentic or a fake version of ourselves and cope? And the short answer is, for some people, yes, it can be. You probably know people in your life who live their entire life with a persona, and they kind of just exist in that, and that's who they are. But I would suggest, and I would guess, if you're watching this video or you're here live right now listening to this, I would guess that you probably don't value being inauthentic. The problem that I see with being inauthentic is that eventually it makes you feel empty. You start to feel like something's missing, or you're hiding. That's the experience I've had, is when you're inauthentic or you're a persona version of yourself, it's like you're hiding something. And as we all know, secrets, they become like a burden or a prison that we live in. And if we're hiding who we truly are, or we're not expressing who we truly are, we're not being the person and doing the things that are important to us, we don't live a fully actualized, explored life. And I think it was, I don't know if it was Socrates or one of the wise philosophers said, the unexplored life is not worth living. And if you resonate with that quote, then you know that inauthenticity is not for you. So the short answer is, do we need to be authentic? No, we don't. But if you want to live a fully actualized, rewarding, rich life, I think that authenticity is well worth exploring and leaning into, especially as you grow and you develop and you get a little older, definitely. Let's next talk about what authenticity isn't, or what is not authenticity. I don't know how you say that clearly, but let's look at what it isn't, because I think there are some mistakes that I've made or I've perceived in the past, and especially in the book Authentic by Stephen Joseph, he talks about what it isn't as well, and I think it's worth exploring. So what authenticity isn't, from my perspective, complaining or being a victim. So if you're just going around in the world thinking that the world owes you something, or that it's not fair, or somehow you've been treated poorly, which happens to us all at times, but if that becomes your story, even though you're expressing what's coming out, that isn't being authentic. That actually isn't. That's you being a victim, or letting life take over and control you. So you've got an external locus of control. That's one of the most important things I had to understand, because you do meet a lot of people who are very expressive about their problems or their pain or whatever. And it does seem like, in a way, they're letting their true selves out, but it's actually not their authentic self, because they're just using it as a device either to get sympathy or to have a reason to not do something in their life. So this idea of being a victim or complaining, or that, those are not authenticity. And it's hard when you fall into that trap to see, oh, okay, you might even think you're being authentic, but you're actually just being a victim. The second thing is authenticity is not about being pushy or being manipulative. Very often we see people in life, and you've probably met some of them, maybe you've been one of them, who tends to push or be overbearing with people. And we've all experienced that with people. And you might think that that person is being authentic in a way because they're expressing who they are to the world. They're telling the world what they want. Sure, in a way, that's what's happening. But at the same time, they're using it as a device. They're using it kind of like a mask or a way to push their agenda that actually isn't rewarding for them, and it's not helpful for the world. So this idea of being aggressive or pushy or overbearing, that is also not authenticity. The other thing that authenticity is not, I believe, is it's not being overly expressive or dramatic or whatever. I want to put a caveat here. If that is who you truly are as a person, if you're a very expressive out there person, maybe it is more authenticity for you. But if you want to be an authentic version of yourself, it doesn't mean you have to pour every emotion out to the world constantly and, express every single thought or feeling and put it out there. That's not what it's about. We see a lot of that on YouTube and social media, where people, they have the crying video or whatever, and maybe that's cathartic for them in the moment, or they're being overly expressive. Human beings are attracted to drama. We love it. So the risk is that you think that by being overly expressive or dramatic, that somehow that's being authentic as well. Again, if that is who you truly are as a person, if you are a very emotive type person, and I know some people like that, I'm sure you do too, then maybe that is closer to authenticity. But if you want to be an authentic person, it doesn't require you to be that. It just requires you to be your genuine self. And if it's times that means being more emotional, it does, but it's not required. Let's now talk about what I believe are the ways that you can start to find your own authenticity, or how to be more authentic in your life. So the first thing that I have learned is spending time alone really helps. The world we live in today is very crowded. And even if you live on your own, in your own space, you find because of the influx of media and the internet, it's very easy to get overcrowded mentally, to constantly be connected. And I'm realizing as I'm saying this, you're probably watching this live or you're on YouTube, so I'm kind of going against what I'm saying here. But the idea is, if you truly want to tap into your authentic self, there are times where you need to let all that go. And you need to sit in your own space, whether it's a bedroom or I like to sit on a balcony because it's kind of outside and there's a bit of fresh air and nature. But sit there and just be present with yourself. And this is very tough to do. It's very hard because there's a tendency now to lean into, well, let's get some entertainment, let's get some distraction, let's learn. Especially for me, I'm like, let's learn something, let's think about something. But sitting in your own authentic energy for a while, if you want to call it that, or awareness, and just being present for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just sitting in it really, really helps. I also find another way to do this is to go out into nature somewhere by yourself. So go walking or go to the ocean or something like that, because it just gives you a bit of headspace that's different. And what will start to happen is, if you give yourself that time, your authentic self that time to open up, it will start to speak to you more. It will start to say, hey, this is important, or this isn't important, or you've been saying this, but this isn't quite right, or whatever. You will hear your own voice more when you actually start to sit for a little bit of time. So I would suggest, if you're struggling with feeling authentic, find a place and find some time to just sit and be alone. And again, by that, I mean, don't be alone on your phone. Sit still and just see what comes out. And sometimes, honestly, that's terrifying. I haven't done this experience, but I know there are some people who really recommend sensory deprivation tanks for this, where you're a floating tank, where you're actually in a dark sort of tank with water and everything, and apparently your brain goes crazy. But I may try that in the future, because I think there's something in that where it starts to let go of all the noise of the world, and you find more of your authentic self. The next thing is to spend time on your passions and your interests. Not things that you're doing because you think you should, or because other people are doing them, or because you want to have a social aspect, but things that you are genuinely personally interested in. And there's no judgment here. It is whatever you love to do. So it might be something like, I love to read, I love to write. Those are my things. I love to speak. I love to create speeches. For you, it might be artistic, it might be physical, it might be something to do with sports or travel or whatever, but invest time in doing that, because that will give you a sense of realness and you will connect with it much more if it's for you and you're practicing and spending time in it. I've shared this before in different videos, but it took me until I was 35 years old to actually start speaking and doing public speaking and speeches, because I wasn't tuned into my authentic self. And so when I started doing that, totally different experience than I'd ever had before. So whatever it is for you, explore your passions and hobbies and interests and spend time in them. Invest in them for yourself. Don't worry what other people think. Don't worry if it's for a success or whatever. Just do it for you, and you'll find a total difference will start to come over you. Third thing, which is very hard to do, and I've been practicing this a lot lately, is to stop lying. Stop lying to other people and to yourself. And I realize this is kind of confronting when I say it. The idea of lying is something that we all accept from other people and from ourselves. And I've been really thinking about this a lot, is why do we lie? Why do we feel it's okay to tell white lies or half-truths or withhold the truth from other people when we're in social situations or at work or whatever? It's because it's easy. It's because it's easier to not tell the truth than it is to tell the truth. If you tell the truth to someone, you might offend them. You might come across as offensive. You might come across as, not what they want to hear. And that's uncomfortable. Now, I'm not, by saying stop lying, I'm not necessarily saying go around and start abusing people and telling them direct, harsh truths to their face. But what I'm saying is, if you don't want to do something, let's say someone invites you somewhere and you don't want to do it, say to them, you know what, I appreciate the invite, but I'm not really interested, or it's not something I feel like doing. And just be honest about it, rather than making an excuse and saying, oh, I have to check my schedule, or I think I'm busy that weekend, or whatever. Just practice not lying. Just tell them the truth about what it is that you're feeling or thinking. If someone asks your opinion about something, tell them the truth about it, and just sit with that discomfort of telling the truth, because in the discomfort is your authenticity. That's where you start to find it a little bit more. And people will trust you more because they know you always tell them the truth. As part of this, and I kind of already mentioned this, but the other part is stop withholding. So if you are feeling something, if something's important to you, whether it is an activity or it's something you want to express to someone or whatever, don't withhold it. Don't deny it. Actually express it to the person, even if it means risking some rejection, even if it means maybe not succeeding in the way you thought you would. Have the courage to express what it is that's important to you. You will feel much more authentic and much more free if you can do that. Again, I want to be careful here to delineate and say, don't be offensive to people. You don't have to tell them off or be mean. But if there's something and there's an intention of helping and supporting people behind with telling them the truth and not withholding, then maybe it's worth doing. I've had some experiences with family members in the past where they've had blind spots in their life, and I decided to tell them the truth from my perspective of what I thought was happening. And it was tough. We had some disagreements, we had some fallouts for a while, and it happened, but we're both better people for it. And it was easier to not tell them, to withhold it, but telling them actually helped them to grow as well, and it helped our relationship to be richer. So stop withholding. That's another part of being more authentic. The next one is to choose your own direction. And this is something that I think is it's a bit of a cliche in life now, but live your own life, be your own person. But how often do we really, truly do it? How often do we actually say, this is the direction I want to take in my life? This is the person I want to be. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to have, and stick to it. Very rarely, I think. I'm as guilty of this as anybody else. But if you fall into the habit of living other people's version of your life, you will start to feel inauthentic. We all do it to some extent because we have to fit into society, into a family, into a work culture, whatever. But if you can start to decide your own direction, navigate your own ship, whatever metaphor you want to use, that starts with having a plan, having goals, having ambitions, having a strategy. That will really help you to become more authentic, because the true person you are can guide you very clearly, but you have to tune into that person. You have to be willing to face the fear of failure and the risk of rejection and whatever that comes with that. But people will respect you for it as well, much more, and you'll find you're much more free if you want to do it. The final thing is to face reality and to embrace it. And a good example of this would be death. So think about this reality that we're all going to die one day. If you avoid it, if you kind of bury it down and think, oh, no, it doesn't matter, you don't live a full life as a result. If you think, wow, one day I'm going to die, it changes your perspective. You actually have to embrace the reality and think, wow, I'm going to die, so I better do something worthwhile with my life. I better value the relationships that I have while I have them. And it completely changes the way you feel about yourself and about the world, because you're living in the authenticity and the reality of the world. So this is a tough one, because a lot of people have different versions of reality or different perspectives. But if you can, try to embrace the basic truths. And the idea of death and dying is a very real truth. It's something that we all deal with. And I'm not trying to necessarily be negative here. There's a lot of wonderful positive truths as well, like love and self-growth and all those kind of things, and achieving what we want in life. But embrace the reality of what's going on, and you will find that it makes you more free. A perfect example of this is, and I've joked about this many times, but my hair, as I started to go bald, I kind of resisted the reality of shaving my head. I was like, no, I can hang on here. It looks good, it's fine. And it didn't look fine. And it took someone, my fiance, telling me, we need to shave your hair. It's done, to actually embrace the reality. And when I did, now I feel great. And in fact, it's much easier because I don't have to try and style this little frond of hair. I'm not trying. This is me. I'm a bald man, and who cares? And nobody else cares, and I don't care anymore, and I'm free as a result. So whatever your reality is, you have to embrace it. You have to sit with it, and you have to let it sort of become part of your life. And that makes you more authentic. The funny thing is, when you are embracing your reality of what you are, people love you for it. So lean into it more and embrace, hey, this is the reality. This is the deal. This is how I am. And you will find that people will actually love you as a result. The last ideas that I want to share are around the idea that authenticity, it's not an endpoint. It's a process. It's a journey. And this might sound kind of obvious, but I think we kind of trap ourselves into thinking, I'm now my authentic self. And what I would say, what I've learned, is that you are emerging as a more authentic version of yourself. So if you think about yourself 10 years ago, you're probably a more authentic version of yourself today than you were 10 years ago. And you will be 10 years from now, even more authentic. Think of it that way, that it's a journey, it's an evolution, it's an emergence, and it completely changes your perspective. As I said in the beginning of this video part here, the challenge is falling into and out of authenticity at times in our lives. So if you think of it not as an endpoint, but as a process, you will have moments where you find yourself not being your authentic self. Maybe you're withholding, or you're lying, or you're not following your heart, or you're not spending time really tuning into your inner voice, or whatever. Realize that and go, okay, I'm in the process. And you will find that if you do that, you start to tune back into your authenticity, your real self, and it makes you a better version of yourself as a result of having gone away from it and come back, gone away from it and come back. So that's a really important point to think about, is, am I in the process of becoming more authentic? I would say as well that you have to keep removing parts of yourself. This is a really good insight that I learned. It was actually from the story of Michelangelo, the artist creating the statue David. And I got a chance several years ago to go to Florence in Italy and actually see the statue, and it's incredible. Just one solid piece of marble carved, and it's this incredible piece of work. But what I learned is that the statue was built by him visualizing the man inside. Michelangelo's David was inside this big block of marble. So he basically said, I carved away anything that wasn't Michelangelo, that wasn't David. He carved away anything that wasn't David, and that's what emerged as a result. And I think that's a great metaphor to think about, because you kind of think of your life as you've got to keep building, you've got to keep creating. But actually what you've got to keep doing is removing, taking things away, and letting the real you emerge as a result. So it's just a way to think about it. In this process of becoming more authentic, think about removing the personas and the things that don't matter to you, and the lies and the withholding and all those activities that aren't actually important to you. And what you'll be left with is a more authentic version of yourself. So there we go. That's a lot of ideas about authenticity and how to be more authentic. I hope that's insightful for you. I'm going to leave you with a quote which I love, which is by Carl Jung. He said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that's a good way to sum up, I think, the journey of authenticity and becoming a more authentic version of yourself.